Yeshua doesn't have feathers all over him. So, explain that one to me. It says he'll cover us as with the wings of an eagle. That's metaphorical, just saying that he's going to cover us and protect us from harm, like an eagle's mother would do.
Right.
Now, at about six minutes into the video, you can hear how on a plane, gold flakes started to fall out of the air and people got saved. And there's in parentheses it says, without hearing the gospel.
Okay. No, they're not saved.
I totally agree with you on that. And we talked about the Kingdom Now theology, right?
Yes.
And it just says that, I'm not even going that. We talked about it. Now, you told me it was a book when I mentioned it earlier, but there's something called the House of Generals.
Or, something like that, yeah. Or God's Generals.
Right.
Yeah.
And it says here, the greatest library of revivalist material. It says, in this video, from Bethel, Johnson mentions the great revivalist and says that the Lord told him to honor him with this library because they have walked faithfully before the Lord in the past. Johnson continues, he will give us access to their anointings. Again, that's necromancy because that's the grave sucking, right?
Yes.
And some of the names that he mentioned, and Billy Graham, I don't know how he gets, because Billy Graham is a Baptist and never really got into the manifestations of the Holy Spirit.
No, he didn't. I don't know why he's there.
Yeah, he's an evangelist. Maybe that has something to do with it. But they don't honor evangelists. They honor prophets and apostles. So that's something to research. Anyway, Amy Semple McPherson, and she started a church. I can't remember. It might have been Foursquare.
Could be.
Yeah. Smith Wigglesworth, which we mentioned earlier. William Branham, I never heard of him. Catherine Coleman, we've all heard of her, excuse me.
Healing Rooms.
Yeah. John G. Lake, John Wimber, we've heard of him.
I think William Branham followed John G. Lake, or the other way around.
Oh, okay. Okay, that explains that. John Wimber, William J. Seymour, Maria Woodworth Etter, Lorenza Dow, Alexander Dowie, Jack Coe, and Evan Roberts, not Evan Roberts, Evan Roberts. So all these people, they revere them because they were, hardcore Pentecostals, most of them, I think.
Yeah.
And,
so you read about their lives?
Yeah. Yeah, they did a thing about Amy Semple McPherson on TV not too long ago. My goodness.
Yeah. These are people that have duped, hoodwinked a lot of people.
Yeah.
Through their ministries. And these are not good stories.
That's right.
From the ones I've read about. I've read about Dowie, Branham, Lake, McPherson.
Mm-hmm.
These people weren't necessarily really honest people.
No, definitely not.
Their ministries. They seriously went out to lie to people.
Yeah, I agree.
And I don't think honoring them is. I think it's sad that they're making these out to be God's generals. And since when did God have generals anyway?
Yeah, the last one I read about was what was it? Joshua, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was a military general, not a spiritual general.
Yeah.
Now they have a band called Jesus Culture, right?
Yeah, and I know very little about them. I know some about them, but not. I've read about the leader, and that's.
Is that Kim Walker?
No, I can't remember his name now. He's a longer name.
Well, Kim Walker, I believe, is a member of the band, and
it's probably true, but
he or she, because Kim can be either. Testified to seeing Jesus in person and described him as like a Stretch Armstrong doll. I know. I laughed for a while about that. She said she always sees God the Father in person, who tears a piece of his heart out right out of his chest. Again, the Father is spirit and truth. Those who worship him in spirit and truth. But that's funny because even Moses, when he wanted to see the Lord, and I believe that was Yeshua at that time, no one sees God and lives.
No.
And I don't care if you're born again. We'll see God when we have our translated bodies, because flesh and blood cannot endure seeing God.
Yeah.
We'd be blown into subatomic particles. Now, here's something I found real interesting too, Kristin. Bill Johnson says that owls represent the prophetic because they see in the night.
Yeah, I've read that, but I didn't go into too much on that. What do they say? Anything else about that?
Well, not much more than that, but I will tell you that owls are demonic. They're considered a highly spiritual animal by the New Age, and especially Wiccans.
Yeah.
And they're also associated with UFO phenomena, believe it or not. A lot of times when these entities abduct people and bring them back, the people recount seeing owls because of the big black eyes, in their face and stuff like that. But so owls figure in with the occult in every single way. And another thing I want to say is, if we're believers, we don't concern ourselves with the dark, with the night. We're supposed to be lights shining in that light to reveal things that are hidden in the darkness.
Right.
Why would we want to see in the darkness if you can light up the darkness and reveal what's hidden there?
Yeah.
Maybe because he wants to live in darkness, and that's what his church is into. But
yeah, people, it's like they don't, you wonder if these guys, like these guys here that we're talking about tonight, you wonder if they're willfully ignorant of all this, that they truly believe this with their whole heart, like they really think they're right on with God.
Mm-hmm.
Or, because, do they know? Or do they know
Mm-hmm.
that they're off? Do they know they're wolves? Or are they just completely innocent in their deception?
Well,
Are they deceived? Are they completely deceived in their deception?
I truly think that they are. I think that they're no different from any worldly person that's a pawn of Satan.
Yeah.
And because I think that they are worldly people, I really, and I can't testify as to if a person's saved or not. Only God knows a person's heart.
Right.
But judging from the fruit that they manifest, you talked about fruit earlier.
Yeah.
Their fruit is rotten. Their fruit is they're growing apples on a cactus, and that doesn't belong there. And because of this, they're showing themselves for who they are. If a person is discerning enough to be out there and see it.
Yeah.
And what really grieves my heart is, and believe me, I didn't even know there was that they had a television station or that they had things on TV. But I've watched other people. I've watched Joel Osteen's services as long as I can stomach them, and then I have to shut them off. And I see the poor people out there that are so duped, and they're shaking their head yes to when he's coming out with his heresy. And the same with Todd Bentley's services, when he's coming out with his garbage, and they're sitting there laughing and shaking their head in agreement with him. And, I don't want to call them mindless, but in a way they kind of are, because they don't want to know the truth. So if you're going to let somebody do your thinking for you, I guess you are mindless. But,
yeah.
Just to see them doing that, and it just kind of breaks my heart, that people would allow themselves to be duped. They're the first ones that'll complain when the government does something wrong to them, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
And the first person to yell at you because you're judging them if you try to tell them the truth. But they'll sit there and they'll listen to a wolf and a deceiver spouting out all these lies and half-truths, and sit there agreeing with them. And that's just, man, that is so grievous. And if I'm grieving it, I can only imagine what Yahweh's doing. It's...
Right. So I guess I'd like to say that if anybody knows anybody involved with this church or these people we've mentioned, pray for them, that their eyes would be opened.
Right.
Pray for Bill and Benny and all these people that we mentioned, that their eyes would be open to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
If you can talk to the people that are in these organizations, do it in a loving spirit, because they will not be, they're not from what I hear, they get very defensive.
Oh, sure.
When you speak against Bethel Church.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely be prayed up.
Right.
If you speak to anybody about it. So.
Definitely. Kristin, we were talking before the show, and I've got a, if the audience and you would allow me to, I've got a little bit to read about. There was actually a woman, her name is, what is her name? Annika Mongan, Mongan, and she's got a blog online, and she wrote a blog entry called Christian Prophecies for a Witch. Now, from what I understand, this woman used to be a member of an evangelical church, became disillusioned and left the church and went into Wicca, of all things. And my question is, was she really saved to begin with? But again, that's God's call. And I'm going to try to read this as fast as I can. We can go over our time. We have 3 hours, but I don't know how long you're good for. So,
okay.
But anyway, let me read it real quick, because it's a really interesting article, and it'll just show you the depths that have been. I don't want to say attained, because you got to climb to attain something. The depths that have been reached by a couple ladies at least in Bethel Church. Okay, well, the first paragraph she talks about that she's a witch and that she has a friend named Sam. I'm trying to encapsulate as much as I can, and that she used to be evangelical, but she departed from that lifestyle, that world. So her friend wanted her to go visit a local healing service hosted by a ministry team from Bethel Church. So she decided to go along. So on the way to the service, Sam told her about the problem she was having with the Christian community, and that she was considering leaving. I don't know where else to go, the woman said, but I feel like I need to leave. I just don't want to cut off the branch upon which I'm sitting. So anyway, she nodded, and she remembered all the pain that she went through when she was going to church, and all she said she could do was listen and validate Sam's experience. Okay, so she said she arrived at an industrial part of town and was becoming less of myself, she says. Maybe this had been a bad idea. People in the parking lot greeting us too enthusiastically. I felt like I was being love-bombed and wanted to run. The service was held in a flat building with low ceilings and an old carpet that gave off a damp but moldy smell. Cheap fluorescent lights weakly flickered from the ceiling and added to an abandoned warehouse feel. Overly padded conference rooms, reminds me of a psych hospital. Overly padded conference room chairs were set up in a circle in which people were praying. Wobbly speakers projected an emotional praise and a worship CD into the room. Bright light from an adjacent kitchen illuminated the table. On and on and on. Near the entrance, fold-up tables were covered with art supplies ready to be used for prophetic painting. Sam and I went to the far side of the room and sat in a short row of chairs that had been pushed out of the way. That's funny, because when I go to a new church, I always sit in back in case I got to bail, too. After a while, two women approached us and asked if they could prophesy over us. Sam nodded, and they placed their hands on her, praying and asking God for guidance. I was amazed when they described the same image Sam had used earlier. Sam was supposed to separate herself from a group and cut a branch from a tree. Then they moved over to me and asked to lay hands on me. Just a few years ago, I would have replied with a categorical no. She says she has a Christian friend who still, all these years later, holds a grudge against her for refusing prayer from her. This time, however, I took a big gulp of stale air and nodded in consent. All right. Let's see. So the first prophecy, she says, I see suitcases, the first woman said, at train stations in many different places. You have traveled a lot, but I think this will also you will also travel again. Yes, I think this is your future also, but it will be different. It will be better than it was. It looks like you've been uprooted a lot, haven't you? And she says, no kidding. I thought I should have kept a list of all the addresses I've lived in the past decade. So far, so good. I nodded encouragement to the woman, but her eyes were closed, and she seemed to be listening to something, then kept talking. And it continues, you need to tell your story. It will minister to people. I see your words reaching thousands, and some are on a similar journey. I get the sense that if you haven't yet, you should start writing about your story and your community and your faith. I think that's important. Well, then she said she took a pause, and she had started